Obviously, I'll start by talking about and addressing the situation, the change that we're going through, and then hopefully we can move forward onto a big football game that's coming up, and make sure we all get ourselves back into the task that we have at hand. So, as you all know, we've made a change, and Coach Longo will no longer be our offensive coordinator and be with us. This is not an easy thing. Obviously, you guys all understand that. This is a very tough decision. And it's even, one of those things that's incredibly tough, not on everybody involved, but I think first and foremost for Phil and obviously his family too. So out of respect for them, I probably won't go as deep. But just so you know, on Sunday, I had made a decision to what we needed to do, and then, came in, obviously had a conversation with Phil and pretty much decided that we needed to do it now. And this is never something I ever envisioned doing or wanted to do, and especially doing it when there's still games to be played in a season. But felt like for all involved, and most importantly for our program and the kids in that locker room, what we needed to do right now was to move forward. And that's, like you said, that's not an easy thing. That's a very difficult, that's a very tough thing. It's a unusual situation that everybody's going to have to be able to handle and move forward. But out of respect for Phil, out of respect for his family, just want to say that I appreciate what he has done. He did what I asked him to do when he came here to bring a system. But I think it's just at this point in time that we felt like I felt like it's the chance we got to move forward, and so we're going to do that, and we have, and now getting prepared for Nebraska is the thing that's on our mind. So hopefully we can move a little bit forward and shake off what happened on Saturday night, because hopefully we learned a lesson from a few weeks before that on a hard-fought, tough battle night game against Penn State that we didn't bounce back from very well. So we've got a lot of things on our plate right now. Those guys in the locker room got a lot of things on their plate, and we got a job to do, and that's to finish this thing, especially for the seniors.
Luke, how much, if at all, did you consider keeping Phil on, given that backup quarterback either started or played meaningful snaps in 12 of his 22 games?
Yeah, it's a really tough situation, right? I mean, we've all understand that, and we've seen that. I'm not going to dive as much into it, but I'll just tell you the basic gist, what I told the team. It's not about play calls. It's not about points scored. It's not about touchdowns. It's moving forward with leadership. And that's, to me, what we have to do and why we're doing it right now.
Steve? Yes, and then we'll go Colby. Just who's going to be calling plays for the rest of the season, and why that particular person?
Why does it matter? Right? I mean, the offense will, be run, and those guys will do a lot of things collaboratively together, and I don't think it really is important as to who is calling it. I guess it gives you the ability to point a finger at somebody if that's the case, but it's not one of those things I think is that important. Sometimes I think it's overrated in some ways, but it'll be a collaborative group, and those guys will have to work a lot together.
As you start to look forward, what are some of the specifics that you're looking for in that position for the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I don't want to dive into it. Obviously, I do like what we do. I mean, it's not like we want to go back and think we're going to be in 22 personnel. Like, we got to have varieties. We got to be able to do things moving forward. We got to be able to spread the field, but we got to continue to build upon the things that we've done. And that's where it's not like, hey, how are you going to do this week? Are you going to change? Like, no. The idea is this is a progression. Right? Regardless of who's actually calling the plays, the progression is how you continue to evolve the offense in particular for what best fits Wisconsin. And what best fits Wisconsin is using the things that you do have. And, I don't think that means you deviate from a ton of different things that we've done, but we know that we got to continue to grow and progress and be multiple in what we're doing, and it won't change this week or next week or that much different as we move forward.
I guess similarly, I guess I'm wondering, now that you've been here almost 2 seasons, what maybe have you learned about coaching about Wisconsin that's maybe affected the vision of what kind of offense you think can be successful here?
I don't know that there's specifically anything. I mean, again, it's not like, okay, well, you play in cold weather, so you can only do, like, I think it was pretty nice on Saturday night, right? I mean, it's the second to last week, third to last week of the season, and still got good weather. I don't think that there's anything in particular that'd say, well, you got to do this at Wisconsin, you got to do this at Nebraska, you do this if you're at UCLA or USC. I think we do understand and recognize where the strength of our program is, and that's on the offensive line. And we got to continue to build upon what that is and moving forward. That won't change, shouldn't change, and wherever I've been, I wouldn't want it to change. So I don't know if there's anything specific on just, hey, okay, well, this is more fit for Wisconsin and this is more fit for someplace else. It's how do you evolve, how do you grow, and how do you continue to, like I said, evolve in what you're doing. So it's not staying the same, it's not going backwards, it's always got to be evolving.
I say, Luke, Phil coached the quarterbacks. How is that position going to be determined in terms of who's going to be mentoring the quarterbacks going forward?
We're getting closer towards working towards Nebraska talk. Kenny Guyton will be with the quarterbacks. We'll kind of lump those guys together with the quarterbacks and wide receivers. We've got some other guys who'll be able to help in that way too. But it'll be a little bit more of a natural thing where those guys will be together with the quarterbacks and wide receivers. And Kenny Guyton, who obviously has played and coached some quarterbacks, is going to be the guy that's kind of running that room.
Luke, a decision like this obviously has ramifications in a number of ways. Is there value in doing this at this time with regard to recruiting, early signing period coming up, or transfer portal, anything of that nature?
No. Again, you overlook the most important thing. It's the guys in that locker room. It's the program and things like that. So you hope that those things don't come into the decisions that you're making, right? I said that I had an idea that we were going to go another direction. How soon, how fast were we going to do it? That was not a decision that I had completely made up my mind on Sunday just yet. But felt like whether it was visiting with Phil and things like that this was what we needed to do now. But it doesn't have any bearing like they do with some of the head coaches. Like, well, we got to do this now so that we can get in the recruiting and get in the that's not that doesn't come into the factor. Try to leave it out of the fact, to be honest with you. You think first and foremost about your program, the kids in that locker room, but there's a part of you that thinks about, the guys involved and their families as well.
This is sort of a Nebraska question, and you not admitting who's going to call plays makes it more difficult, but how do you sell to your players that this is the best chance to get them to win a game on Saturday?
I'm not sure what you mean by how do I sell to the players.
Because you don't have a lot of guys on your
plays.
No, you don't have a lot of guys on your staff that have play calling experience. So assuming somebody that's doing it is not.
How much homework have we all There's a bunch of guys that have play calling experience. Now, I'm not sure. I got some play calling experience. I did the
offensive.
Yeah, 5th grade, 7th grade, right out of college there for a little while. Sometimes I think we do get it overblown. Like, well, who's the guy calling? Look, I called it for. I don't want to get into this, but I called it for a lot of years as a defensive guy at Ohio State when nobody really knew who was calling the play, who was calling the defense. Well, I don't know. Does it matter, right? I mean, we had a bunch of co-coordinators. We had, so and speak, who was, we didn't get involved in it. Every time I was asked at a press conference, hey, by the way, who calls the defense? Why does that matter, right? So that you have somebody to, kind of point at. And I knew deep down, I knew who was calling it. And I've always kind of had that philosophy. So I don't know that it matters. I think our kids understand what the situation is. I do believe that they, they've got a great mindset. They've got a positive, feel about what it is that's going on. But again, we got to go out and see that too, right? I understand what you're asking. I do think that when you build relationships, guys believe in you, whether you've ever done it before or not. Right? Everybody has their own opinions, but the unique thing is it only matters what those guys in that room believe and will go out and do. And so we still got to be able to see that. But that is something that was definitely taken into consideration as we move forward.
Do you have a timeline in your mind when you would like to have the new offensive coordinator in place? Is it kind of go back to that recruiting?
We play on Saturday, and we go to Nebraska, and that's probably the timeline that I'm thinking. This is a Monday. Tuesday's practice is coming up in less than, in 25 hours. So right now that's where my timeline is. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But don't think I'm not naive to making sure that the program's, the number one thing that's we're making sure that we're taken care of. And so we're going to worry about 2:30 on Saturday right now, and the rest of the timelines will probably just be in the back of my head.
Will Braden remain the starting quarterback for Saturday?
Yeah, never a doubt. You know, I don't know what else the idea is, right? I mean, like, we all have to, you know, put some pressure on different people, and you know, again, Braden's had a lot on his plate, and he's got to continue to grow and get better, and he knows that. And you know, we're going to give him a better opportunity to be able to do that.
You mentioned you think the players have been pretty positive in general. Do you worry about morale with this group that has tried to get up for a lot of big games, it hasn't happened, and now they have to go through this?
No, I don't. I think that sometimes you know, we overblow what that is. I think the getting over what happened on Saturday night, getting over that gut punch, getting over the emotions of that stuff, that weighs a lot harder and a lot more on it. You know, I do believe that we've always done this thing. I don't care whether it's defense. I don't care if it's me. You know, I think maybe that was one of those issues that it was not as good as where we wanted it offensively, that it was more about an individual. Like, that's what the program is. It's complementary ball. It's so much everybody rely upon each other that any one person shouldn't matter all that much. And I know that's, you know, everybody, it's hard to say, well, they're the coordinator, and they're like, I hope that it wouldn't be that much different if somebody else was calling the plays on offense or on defense. That's my vision for what I want the program to grow. There's things you want to grow as in your locker room. There's things you want to grow on your football field. There's things I want to grow in the coaching staff. And to me, that everybody believes and is going in the same direction, that if you had the opportunity to call it, maybe it'll be a little bit different. If somebody else had the chance to call the defense, well, maybe in certain situations they'd call something a little bit different. Maybe they'd blitz a little bit more. But the general idea is we're all doing the same things, believing in the same things. And it shouldn't matter quite as much if we prepare and do the things we need to do about who's actually making and has the final say.
Coach, I know he didn't get credited for the sack on Saturday, I think, but the play that Xavier made against Oregon, where you send him on a corner blitz, and you see oftentimes even the most experienced players will over pursue that and get put on skates. Is that kind of an example of a wild play?
I think we said it maybe after the game. It was a very, very disciplined, heads-up, savvy play for a very young kid. And, you know, that's a guy that only played like 7 snaps defensively in the game. And to have one of those be one of those snaps where everybody wants to be the corner blitz, right? There's a lot of times they don't block the corner blitz, so you just pin your ears back and you go, you know, go make a play, right? And you forget about, wow, that's a pretty elusive guy back there. That's a guy that's, you know, as good as there is in the league, and to be able to process all those things in a short amount of time and the amount of plays that he played, it's even more impressive as I go back and watch it.
You could cut down your defensive line rotation on Saturday for probably the first time this season. Was that just because of how those guys were playing, or is that something you want to see going forward?
Do you have the defensive line rotation?
It was Neal, Barton, Hills, and then a little bit of Dillon, and then
How many plays, you know?
it was like 50 for Hills.
Oh, he
like
did his homework.
12.
You did. Did you actually? Yeah, that's pretty.
The rest of the season has been 6 to 7.
Okay.
I was just wondering if there was.
No, I mean, we want to be able to play 5 and maybe 6. Obviously, the game was the way it was. I could tell you this, that Dylan Johnson played 12 snaps. You're right. You counted him up right. Going back at it, I probably would say I wish maybe he'd played 20, 25. And he is progressing, and he's coming on. He did a really good job. And that's going to give us a better chance, hopefully, to maybe not have Elijah Hills play 50 snaps and Ben Barton play 49. And Kurt Neal play 45, and we need to try to balance that thing out a little bit better. So hopefully we can get Brandon Lane involved a little bit more into that rotation, and definitely rely upon Dylan a little bit more as well. But the idea is we want to be able to play 6 guys. We're just probably not there just right now.
Take 3 more. Mark, Zach, Jake.
Along the lines of the defense, just kind of want to get your thoughts on how the state of the state of that unit. How do you feel about that group? Given what you saw against Oregon, obviously Penn State, Iowa was a tough game, but what's the state of the defense in your mind?
I mean, I think they're continuing to grow. I think they're continuing to find ways to get better. I think that what we always tell ourselves is we're not going to pat ourselves on the back. Our job is to outplay the other team's defense, and that's the motivating thing that you got to be able to do. When you play against a great defense on the other side, there's that much more of a challenge for you. And so we don't really with a few weeks left in the season, we don't kind of look at the state of the union and where we're at. We just always look at day to day and how do we continue to push our guys to get better. And then sometimes later in the year, that means do you have a good enough rotation? Are you able to, how do you do a Tuesday practice and a Wednesday practice so that your best is on Saturday? And that's where I think we're figuring out what's that best fit for that group of guys as we get into these last few weeks of the season.
Luke, with how this played out with Phil, do you have any hesitation moving forward with hiring somebody that you haven't worked with before?
We're back to square one. That's not something that I'm worried about right now, to be honest with you. I had a relationship with him. I'm not saying it didn't work. As far as a relationship wise, it's just, the ability to adapt and do some other things is where we got to make sure we're on the same page. And, but that's not something I'm concerned right now with. I haven't been a lot of places. I mean, that's probably the toughest thing, that someone would say that I have in my, being at one place for so long and then being at another place for, amount of time that you were with not a whole lot of turnover in some of those positions. You don't get to work with a lot of people. You don't get to know a lot of people, but I also think that that's what's important to me. And, I can tell you this, it'll be the right one, the right person.
I promised I was going to ask a recruiting question because it's 2 weeks out from the early signing period right now. But just even with what's happened this weekend, just what is the messaging for recruits as this early signing period is coming forth? But also now with an offensive coordinator search, what's the message to those that are projected even to play on offense?
I don't know if we said an offensive coordinator search, but I think that's the philosophy of the whole program is, do you believe and trust in who we are and what we do? I know it's a little bit more difficult if you're in a position where you're not sure who your coach is going to be. But a lot of that is the belief in what it is that we're doing as a whole, from the leadership from the very top moving forward. That's why when you ask, are you guys going to be that much different? No, it's going to be a progression, right? It's going to be the opportunity of what we've done in 2 years to continue to grow, offensively and to continue to grow defensively. Who that is and who's in charge, so to speak, it'll be a little bit different. And it's something that we have to address and make sure those guys talk to. But hopefully the way that we've recruited, with everybody having the ability to touch those guys, the ability to make sure they understand who our families are and what we're all about, that changes like this don't put you in a backseat, right? It doesn't change a whole lot because deep down inside, if people believe in who you are and what you're doing, then they'll have some blind faith that whatever you do moving forward, it'll be a good thing.